Okay, all good.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Fresh Dental Shadowing session. Today we have Dr. Patrice Smith, and she'll be sharing her journey in orthodontics and showing some cases. So Dr. Smith, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Patrice Smith. I'm an orthodontist. I'm based in Washington, D.C. And today I'll just give you a brief overview of my journey into orthodontic specialty, a little bit about the field, and I'll show a few cases and tell you exactly what I do in my practice and how I practice orthodontics a little bit differently from how it's traditionally done. All right, so a little bit about me. Again, I am a practice owner, specializing in orthodontics in Washington, D.C. I'm the owner of Infinity Orthodontics, right in downtown. I was born in Jamaica. I grew up there. I migrated to the United States around age 18. I finished high school at 16, did 2 years of undergrad. I actually did my undergraduate studies in dental hygiene at first. But of course, I wanted to do dentistry. At the time in my country, there wasn't a dental school. And so dental hygiene was the next best thing. But as soon as I was finished with dental hygiene, I did 4 months practicing that. And then I decided, this is not really for me. I want to be a dentist. And so I migrated to New York City. I did another 2 years of undergrad there at the City University of New York. And then after that, I applied to the dental school. I got accepted to Howard University, where I spent the next 4 years becoming a dentist. And then I went straight into orthodontic specialty afterwards. Alrighty. So after I graduated from undergrad, I got accepted to Howard University in Washington, D.C. for dental school. Around my 3rd year of dental school is when I applied for orthodontic specialty, but I knew from the very beginning, ever since my 1st year, that I wanted to become an orthodontist. Ironically, in my 1st year, I thought I wanted to be an oral surgeon. I was between the two. I said to myself, I was either going to be an oral surgeon or I was going to be an orthodontist. Nothing in the whole entire spectrum of the specialties of dentistry could be more opposite. They're on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. If you know anything about oral surgery and anything about orthodontics, you know that it is very different. And it takes very different personalities to pursue each path. I'll get into that a little bit later as to why orthodontics was best for me and why it fit my personality so well. So once I was done with orthodontic specialty, I moved to North Carolina for my first associateship job. That's where I met my husband. My husband's also a dentist. I spent 2 years with that first job. It was a very high volume practice. I learned a great deal and just worked on the number of cases I saw per day and the types of cases I saw per day. It was a really good, intense, but good experience. After that first 2 years, I moved to Pittsburgh for my second associateship job. That was more of a corporate setting. Again, I learned a whole lot. I didn't see as many patients per day as I saw in North Carolina, but it was a really good experience. That's when I got married to my husband. Of course, I sold my house that I was living at in Pittsburgh and moved to Washington, D.C. and purchased my practice. And this was in 2020 when I purchased my practice in D.C. All right, so a little bit more about me. I'm not only an orthodontist. Of course, I love creating beautiful smiles. It is my passion. But there are other things that I enjoy. I'm a blogger, and I go by the name The Unorthodox. And I go by that because I see myself as being a little bit different from your typical orthodontist. I don't just do one thing, and I don't do things in a very traditional way. And I'll go more into that later. I'm also the owner of a med spa called Refined Aesthetic Suite, because more times than not, when I perfect someone's smile and they look amazing, they usually tell me, there are more things that I'd love to do. I'd love to enhance, the way I look. I want to get rid of, like my crow's feet, so I do some Botox. And there's some other aesthetic things that I do. company because I love scented candles. I create them myself. I actually started doing that way back in dental school, and it developed into a business. So now I have that as a as another business venture. And I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Dental Helping Hands, where we provide free dentistry for typically people in areas of the world that don't have access to healthcare. For example, I'm from Jamaica, so my focus area or my focus country would be Jamaica and those areas in Jamaica where there's no access to healthcare. There are other founders in the group. Someone else is from Sudan, so that's their focus, and so on and so forth. All right, I mentioned a lot of this already, but I'll recap that after high school, which I finished at age 16, I did dental hygiene as my first college experience at the Northern Caribbean University that was in Jamaica. After that, I migrated to New York City and did my bachelor's degree, got a bachelor's degree in biology. I then applied to dental school and got accepted to Howard University. That was in 2010. And I went straight into the orthodontic specialty after that for another 2 years and ended that in 2016. I was doing associateship jobs until then, all the way up until 2020 when I purchased my own practice. So what is orthodontics? Now let's get into the meat of the matter. So you know a bit about me by now. Now let's get into the specifics of really why we're here. So orthodontics is a specialty of dentistry that deals with the diagnosis, prevention, and correction of malclosed or malpositioned teeth and jaws. It also focuses on modifying facial growth, known as dentofacial orthopedics. Orthodontists see a lot of kids, and we like to intervene very early on, around age 7, when kids are in that mixed dentition. Around age 6 and 7 is when kids start losing baby teeth and they start developing adult teeth. And sometimes they're not really growing in as they should. And so orthodontists can intervene early to kind of modify the growth of how the jaws are forming. And you can do that really, really early. And the ages kind of differ between boys and girls. But typically around age 13 is when our bones start to really fuse into their final position. So you want to get in early, around age 7 or between 7 and 10 to really impact the growth and do some alignment. And that's not to say that you can't do orthodontics later. A lot of people do, but a lot of things that we do later into the teenage and adult years can be prevented if we started orthodontics early. All right, so when I talk about orthodontics and I talk about what it is, the next question I usually get from individuals that come to my office to shadow, that people who seek me out on Instagram and ask me questions is, okay, what do I need to get into dental school? And a lot of people think, there's this huge misconception, a lot of people think that it's only grades, and it's not. Grades is a good thing. You absolutely need that, but there's more that tells a story. You have to tell the entire story, your entire story. And you don't have to have it all figured out in college. You don't have to major in biology or any of the sciences. As a matter of fact, you can major into something completely different, like literature, like English or engineering, as long as at the end of the day you do the prerequisites so that you can get into dental school. If at some point during your college education you decide to pursue dentistry, you can always add the prerequisites, like I mentioned, for dental school to your course load, regardless of your major. So to be a well-rounded applicant, you don't just need good grades. You can do things like get into leadership positions, be the president of some organization on campus. You need some shadowing experience, so seek out, say orthodontists in your area, ask them if they can come to their office, ask them if you can shadow and ask them questions. Research is good. It just shows that you can do a deep dive into an area of study. And of course, you have to have good TAT scores. Any profession that you're entering or any type of school that you're entering, including medical school, you do have to do a qualifying entrance examination. And for dental school, it is the DATs. So a typical day in orthodontics, at least in my practice, I am open 4 days per week, Monday through Thursday. I have a very boutique practice, and what that means is I see a low volume of patients, typically between 30 and 45 per day, and I focus on relationships, customer service, and quality care. I typically arrive at the office at 8:45 in the morning. I have a huddle with my team, about 5 to 10 minutes. Then I start seeing patients at 9, take a break around 1 p.m. for an hour. Then I see patients again from 2 p.m. up until 4:30. Our last patient gets seen at around 4:30. But we typically end the day at 5. And that's typically what you'll see in other orthodontic offices. They will choose to start their day at a certain time, and then they go through the desired hours. Some people will stagger the hours depending on school schedules. So some people may start their working day at 7 a.m. because some patients are able to come in before school, and then they'll finish earlier around 4. Some people may start their day around 10, and then they finish later around 7 when kids can come after school or after work. What kind of complaints do patients present with? Typically in any orthodontic office, the most common issues are crowding, spacing, missing teeth, or impacted teeth. That's when there isn't enough room for the teeth to come in and they get stuck. All right, and that typically happens with canines in the maxillary arch, top arch, or wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth are one of the most commonly impacted teeth. Have an excessive overjet. In layman terms, you'll hear people say, you have teeth that protrude, or for lack of a better term, buck teeth. That's what overjet is. And sometimes we have excessive overbite. That's when the upper teeth hang really low over the lower teeth, giving you a deep bite. We sometimes have dental malocclusion, class 1 and class 2. I won't get into the specifics of those, but those are some of the things that orthodontists want to correct, because we always aim for a class 1 position of the teeth. We typically correct the jaw and skeletal discrepancies. Sometimes that warrants orthodontic surgery, and that's when we team up with an oral surgeon to get that done. And we typically treat 2 phases of orthodontics, or go through 2 phases. Depending on the age, we can start with phase 1, that's typically between ages 7 and 10. And then once the individual or the kid gets all their adult teeth, then we move into phase 2, which is comprehensive orthodontics, which is braces on all teeth. So what kind of procedures do orthodontists typically perform? So I'll take you through a typical, the entire procedure on one patient, that comes into my office. So the patient will come in for a consultation, or they'll do it virtually. That's when we take oral records, which includes intraoral photographs, extraoral photographs, radiographs, usually a panoramic radiograph, which shows the entire lower half of the face. That's the thallometric radiograph, which shows the entire profile view, or the skeletal profile view. And we do an intraoral scan. I have an iTero, and I typically scan all teeth, because every procedure that I do in my office requires, I do digital orthodontics, and I'll explain a little bit of that later. The bonding procedure comes afterwards, once I do my consultation and I come up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan. Bond the braces, which means placing them on the teeth. Typically, they are done with traditional metal braces, ceramic braces, sometimes gold, lingual, which is placed behind the teeth, or some kind of clear aligner like Invisalign. Personally, I have a digital, there's a little bit of a typo there, but it's digital. I have a digital orthodontic practice, and I only do behind the teeth braces, which is the brands are Inbrace and Breas. I'll show you a little bit of that later. I do Invisalign, and I do 3D printed custom braces. And I'll explain to you why this is called digital orthodontics in just a few moments. Once those goes on, they stay in braces for a period of time. In my practice, the average time that any patient stays in braces is 12 months. I don't like people to be in braces for a very long time, so you typically won't see individuals in braces for 24 months, which is the average amount of time in traditional orthodontic offices. I do not like it. I do not do it. I want you to be in and I want you to be out and go enjoy your life with your beautiful new smile. And after that, the braces are removed, means we debond, we remove all the attachments if you have Invisalign, or remove the appliances if you have the 3D printed custom braces or the Inbrace or Breas. After that, you get retainers, which you are to wear indefinitely. From my practice, the first 2 months after braces comes off, you wear them full time, day and night. And then after the first 2 months, you wear them at night indefinitely. Retainers for life to maintain your beautiful smile. Alrighty. Diagnostic tests and instruments that are used typically in the office for diagnosis, I mentioned before, orthodos, intraoral and extraoral, the panoramic radiograph, the phallometric radiograph, an intraoral scanner, and some offices use a cone beam CT or 3D imaging. I do not specifically use a cone beam, at least not yet. Some new technologies in orthodontics. Some of these are newer than others. Some have been around for a long time, but traditionally, in orthodontics, you know about, typically brackets and wires, which are the metal ones. So newer than that, we have clear aligners like Invisalign. Intraoral scanning is pretty popular in all orthodontic offices now. I think nowadays, pretty much every single orthodontist should have a digital scanner. 3D printing, that's where you can scan the patient's teeth and you can actually print out a model of their teeth right in your office. Custom braces that I use in my practice from the brand Lightforce. There are some companies that you can get custom wires from. That's a form of digital orthodontics. I used to do the custom wires. It's usually through a brand called SureSmile. I don't do that anymore, but some offices typically you will find that in. And then behind the teeth braces or lingual braces. And it has some images of those on the side. So in my practice in particular, I told you I do digital orthodontics, right? And what that means is I don't do traditional braces. Traditional braces are the metal brackets that you place on the individual's teeth individually, one by one, and you put the wire in. Honestly, typically these patients are in treatment, depending on what's going on, depending on the malocclusion. They're typically in braces for about 2 years. That's the average amount of time in those braces. I didn't want patients to be in braces that long, regardless of the malocclusion. Now, sometimes, depending on what comes in, depending on the malocclusion, it does warrant that amount of time. But for me, I wanted to really cut down the amount of time that patients are in treatment. Also, I'm in downtown Washington, D.C., meaning my clientele are mostly adult, young professional millennials, and they have busy lives and they don't have time to be in braces forever. And so that led to me having a digital practice. And what that means is every patient that comes in, they get a scan of their mouth. I do all my treatment planning digitally, which means I do it on my computer. I move the teeth and manipulate the teeth where I want them to go. And based on that, my appliances, whether it's Inbrace, Breas, Lightforce, or Invisalign, which means whether it's behind the teeth braces, custom braces that go on the front of your teeth, or Invisalign, those are 3D printed with the specific instructions that I have given each tooth. They are programmed to move exactly where I put them. So I design your smile. I know exactly what your outcome will be from the very first appointment, and my appliances follow my instructions. That's a digital practice, You're in my office, you're in treatment for 6 months to a year, average about a year. Sometimes you go a little bit over, but bottom line is you're not in treatment for a long period of time. It's a win-win. Everybody loves it. I myself love it, and the patients love it, which matters the most. So this is what Embrace looks like. The braces that goes behind the teeth, and that is the wire. The wire is called a smart wire. If you notice, they have a lot of different curls and bends in it, and each one of those curls and bends have programmed teeth movement built in. When you put this appliance in your mouth, it's really the wire that's doing all the work, and based on the specifications that I have programmed into each tooth, the wire gets a certain bend that manipulates the teeth and put that I've programmed into it. So that's what that looks like. And this is a snippet from my practice's website. This is when you go to my website, this is the first image that you'll see pop up. This is a schematic of the other kind of behind the teeth braces that I do. The brand is called Brios. This is my heavyweight. What I mean by that is if I have a really complicated situation, then and the person or the patient comes in and say they want braces that do not show, nobody should know that I'm having my teeth aligned, then I pull out my Brios, which is my heavy lifter. It does really well with the really complicated cases. But it's similar to Embrace in that is the option that goes behind the teeth. But the difference is, at least right now, that the difference is Brios is my heavyweight. It is capable of doing a lot more complicated movements than the other one, than the Embrace. And then this is another image from my website. These are what the 3D printed custom braces look like. The brand is Light Force. They pretty much match the color of your teeth, and they have two different types. They can be translucent, which is really clear, so it will pick up the exact color of your teeth, or it can be white, because there are some patients that still want their braces to show, go figure, and so instead of doing metal, they come in white, because they're 3D printed, so it's not going to be metal. I don't do metal. So you have a choice between either translucent or white. Sorry about that. All right, and then of course Invisalign. Everybody, for the most part, loves Invisalign. The only time you don't wear Invisalign is if you're not going to be compliant with treatment. And compliance meaning if you're not going to be disciplined enough to be able to wear your aligners, take them out when you need to eat, and then put them right back in when you're done. Excuse me 1 second, my office phone is ringing.
It's okay, no problem.
All right, sorry about that. All right. So now that you've seen the type of appliances that I carry in my practice, I'll just briefly run through some, like what a typical case looks like in my practice. Like I mentioned before, the typical cases that any orthodontist would see are things that involve crowding, spacing, excessive overbite, excessive overjet, and things that require surgery. So this is a typical crowded case, and it's one of the most common reasons people seek out orthodontic care, for crowding. In this particular situation, we had to extract teeth so that all the teeth could fit. And as you can see, there are some areas where the patient had still some baby teeth there and the adult teeth are coming in. And so we had to make room for those adult teeth, to come in. So extraction was done along with alignment. And in about 18 months, treatment was complete and the patient was happy. So this is super crowded. Here we're not even showing all the adult teeth. There's some that are still coming in. And this is kind of what happens when we don't intervene early. This patient was in the late teens at this point. At this point, an expander, like an appliance, like an expander would work. And so I had to extract teeth. Now, if this situation had come in earlier, say around age 7, 8, 9, or 10, I would have been able to use an expander appliance, create more room in the patient's mouth, and they would have been able to keep all their teeth. However, this was not an option at age, I think this patient was about 19 at the time, wasn't an option at this age, and so extractions were warranted. And this is the after result. And another typical case that comes in, usually spacing. Typically, people don't like spaces. Even if they have a gap that kind of runs in the family, they typically want it closed, and it's usually a really, really easy fix for an orthodontist. Braces goes on, whether it's Invisalign, clear custom braces, or behind the teeth braces, goes on for a short amount of time in this particular case. It's closed up. It says 9 months here. Looking back, I did this case a while ago, so looking back, I could have gotten this done in 6, because it really wasn't a whole lot. It really wasn't involved. It's not a whole lot to do. And typically, when we close spaces like this, and when a patient starts with a gap, gaps always, or midline diastemas is the proper term, they always threaten to reopen. And so in cases like this, we do want to bond a permanent retainer on the backside of those upper teeth. This patient here had a crossbite in the anterior. It's called an anterior crossbite. As you can see right here in the front, the upper teeth are behind the lower teeth. That is called a crossbite. Put braces on, whichever option it is. Patient stays in braces for a while. They come to their appointments. The wires get changed and manipulated, and over time, the teeth align. This case took 9 months. The patient was in and out of braces and was very happy afterwards. This one, this patient was in mixed dentition, and here we have a really deep bite. And what I mean by a deep bite is all those lower teeth are covered by the top teeth. So it's an excessive overbite, right? Now, this patient, as you can, it looks like there's a lot going on, but honestly, what it is that we have adult teeth and baby teeth existing at the same time. And once we get rid of all the baby teeth, you know, you can see how much simpler the case looks. All right, so after this one actually took 2 years, only because we were waiting on some of the adult teeth to grow in. Not all the adult teeth are in the mouth at this point. As you can see in the upper, the adult canines haven't come in, the second premolars haven't come in at this point, and in the lower, same thing, the adult canines haven't come in, and the second premolars are coming in, and those lateral incisors, those are lingual and towards the tongue. So all of that had to be corrected, and there was a waiting period where we waited to come in. So this one actually took 24 months. That's a deep bite, and of course, we no longer have a deep bite. Upper and lower teeth are being seen. Typical overbite is about 1 millimeter to 3 millimeters, versus in the initial photograph, the overbite was at 100%. Now, this was another case that I did that was actually surgical, and that's because there was misalignment in the jaws. Of course, it exhibits as misalignment of the teeth, but it's more than just the teeth. This patient actually had a mandibular jaw, lower jaw, that was ahead of the upper jaw. All right, so without getting into too many specifics, he had a discrepancy on both sides of his jaw. On the right side, he was class 1. On the left side, he was class 2. The midlines were off, in addition to the lower jaw being ahead of the upper jaw. So braces goes on, we align the teeth. This is his progress while the braces. Teeth get aligned, and now the teeth are in the proper position where, as in terms of alignment. Now you can see really where the teeth are supposed to be, where those lower teeth are ahead of the upper teeth. Once that's set, then the surgeon comes in and he does his manipulation of the jaws. In this particular case, he did a Laporte 1 osteotomy. It was a 3-piece in the top, which means the maxilla was broken into 3 pieces underneath the nose and in sections right down the palate. He actually had his maxilla, his top jaw, moved forward. In some surgical cases, when the bottom jaw is ahead of the top, sometimes there's a combination of moving the top jaw forward and setting the bottom jaw back. But in this situation, the discrepancy wasn't that great to warrant 2 jaw surgeries, so only 1 jaw surgery was done, and the top jaw was moved forward and also expanded. So it was a 3-piece before 1 osteotomy, and it took about 12 months. So even though it was a surgical case, it happened. It was done really quickly, and this is his final result. Let's see. So we have the before. We have the discrepancy with the jaws and also the teeth. During the whole orthodontic journey, and this is his photograph before he went to surgery, and this is afterwards. When the patient comes from surgery, there's usually a 6-week healing period where the patient can only think foods that are liquid, so everything that you eat has to be blended. If it's chicken, if it's rice, you put it in the blender, you sip through a straw. You cannot really manipulate the jaws too much in that 6-week period. The patient comes to me, I do a little bit of detailing of the teeth. It usually requires a little bit of bends in the wire and some rubber bands. And after that, the braces are taken off, the teeth are polished, and the patient can have retainers. All right, so that's typical orthodontics. As I mentioned, every orthodontist is going to do things differently. I specifically have a boutique practice. I only do digital orthodontics because I want my patients to have a really good experience with their orthodontic journey. You know, typically patients don't necessarily want visible braces, at least the young professional clinical crowd that I serve, and they don't want to be in braces for a very long time. And so that is my mission with my practice. So advice to you guys, you future dentists, you know, if you follow people on social media, you know, like on Instagram, dentistry seems very, very glamorous. And I just want to let you know that it's not always glamorous. You really should go into dentistry if you have a love for it, not because of some kind of lifestyle that you may see exhibited on the internet. The glamorous portion of dentistry comes with a price tag. Dental school is very, very, very expensive. Sometimes the work of a dentist is really backbreaking, and sometimes you have countless sleepless nights, not only in dental school, but afterwards too, especially in practice ownership. The profession is to be enjoyed, but also respected. Make sure you go into this career knowing that you truly, truly love it. That would be my one advice. All right, thank you so much, guys, for joining. Make sure you follow Fresh Dental Shadowing on Instagram for updates and future sessions. And if you want to follow me, my practice page is Infinity Ortho on Instagram, and my personal Instagram is dr.unorthodox, and I put it down below. Thank you again. If you have any questions, forward them to Fresh Dental Shadowing, or you can ask me directly via social media.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and the advice. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A session.
All right. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm just going to put my computer at this time.
So we have a question in the chat.
Sure.
That says, what was your decision process like when you were choosing to purchase versus start your own practice?
Honestly, I always wanted to own my own practice. It was only a matter of time. I took several jobs after orthodontic residency to kind of see, to gain experience, number one, and to kind of see what I liked and didn't like in terms of practicing ortho, because every orthodontist is going to practice differently. So when it came down to purchasing my practice, I had to choose where I wanted to be, what community I wanted to serve, and the type of practice biggest decision for me was whether or not I was gonna purchase an existing practice from someone who was, selling or retiring, or whether or not I was gonna do a starting from scratch. I decided to purchase an existing practice, and my reason is very personal. I wanted a practice that was already positively cash flowing, so that I didn't start from ground zero. When you start from ground zero with a practice like a startup, you don't necessarily readily have cash flow coming in, which means there is going to be a period of time where you may have to take another job to supplement your income, because your practice isn't going to be turning over income like instantly. And so I didn't want to take another job. I wanted a practice that was already going, that was already having a profit, and that I could take over and turn into my own. I hope that made sense.
Yes, that's an important thing to consider. I didn't know about that. So another question is, what factors did you think were most important to consider when choosing a dental school?
A dental school. Okay, so there are a lot of things to consider when choosing a dental school. First of all, when you're an undergrad, if you go to any dental school's website, they have their criteria listed that they look for in an ideal candidate. Do not waste these people's time. What I mean by this is, if they tell you you need to have a DAT score of at least 25, if you have a DAT score of 21, you do not fit their criteria. So the first thing first is look at schools that you're interested in. Start with where you live. Start with where you live, then go to the schools that you would like to go to. In-state schools are going to be more cost effective for you. Out-of-state schools are going to be more expensive. So you want to group schools into those kinds of categories at first, in my opinion, and then you want to see which schools fit which schools have the criteria that you match with. You know what I mean? I chose Howard University because it was very personal. I grew up in Jamaica. Most of the dentists that I knew went to Howard University. They spoke very, very highly of Howard University, and that's the school where I saw myself going. Now, I did live in New York City, so I also applied to schools like NYU. I have family members that live in Florida, so I applied to all the Florida schools, Southeastern, UF. At the end of the day, I chose Howard because of their mission, really. Most of the people I knew went to Howard, and the mission is to serve the community, and I really aligned with that. Also, Howard University is so inclusive, and my experience at Howard was more of a family dynamic. Nobody was really out for themselves. Everybody looked out for everybody. The faculty was pretty much on the same page as the students. Everybody wanted everybody else to succeed. There wasn't anything that was super cutthroat about it. There's some stories that I hear from individuals at other schools where individuals are cutthroat and they get left out. So that wasn't the case at Howard University at all. It was a very warm, welcoming, inviting atmosphere that anyone can thrive in. People are really invested in seeing you learn and grow and matriculate and be the best that you can be. And so I aligned with Howard because of that, and that's why I chose it. I did get accepted to NYU. I did not go because of the cost. It was way too expensive. At the time, this was way back in 2010. At the time, NYU was, oh my gosh, don't quote me, $90,000 per year. And so that was out of my price range, and I didn't want to incur that amount of debt for dental school when I had an option to go to dental school for half that price.
There's a lot of factors to consider, definitely.
A lot.
So there's another question that says, how did you learn to make 3D braces and use virtual software tools?
I did not learn these things in dental school or residency. I learned when I got out. And you'll find that even though you go to dental school is going to teach you everything you need to know about dentistry. Need to know. operative word. And when you get out, you're gonna learn a whole lot more things than any school can ever teach you. They never teach you anything about practice ownership. They never teach you anything about business. These are the things that you have to learn. Now, when I got out of residency, I was always interested in the things that are on the market, things that are in the industry that are really like moving the industry in a more positive direction, in a more futuristic direction. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I am a millennial. I wanted to do things I didn't want to do things in for lack of a better term, an old school way. Because traditional braces, metal braces, they work, they're great, they do what they're supposed to do, but they're, in my opinion, very old school. And so I wanted to do orthodontics of the future. I wanted to shift that way. And so I read a lot of literature. I still do attend a lot of conferences, do a lot of CEs, and I really educate myself on what's out there, and maybe new things that are coming to the industry, and I take part. I would call myself an early adopter because I jump on technology, very tech savvy practice, and so when everybody else gets on board with some of these models, I'll already be doing that. Would have been doing it for years by the time everybody gets on board.
The education continues after dentistry.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned your residency program. I wanted to ask, how was that experience? And is it like dental school that you get a mix of lectures and get to practice, or is it more independent and mostly practice?
So dental school and residency are very, very different. You do have a mix still of didactics and then clinical, but it's a little bit more independent. You do have professors that teach you the didactic portions, but you're also in charge of teaching yourself. You have to kind of take your learning into your own hands, do a lot of research. Same thing with the clinical. They teach you everything in theory that you need to learn, and then when it comes to the clinical portion, now that's your time to put everything that you've learned into practice. At this point, when you're in residency, you are a doctor. Go ahead and be a doctor, doc. So, they will teach you, residence programs will teach you what you need to learn, but they also give you kind of free reign to be the doctor.
Thank you. And there's another question in the chat that says, what were the factors that made you go away from oral surgery?
So I'll tell you why I chose orthodontics versus oral surgery. I think my answers would be more streamlined that way. And it all comes down really to my personality. If you know anything about orthodontics, it's considered the thinking man's profession, and I am very much a more cerebral type person. I like the fact that nothing in orthodontics is irreversible. If I move a tooth in a certain way and the patient comes back the next time and it's not a desirable position, I can always move it back. The only thing that's irreversible in orthodontics is if you write a referral to a general dentist to take out the wrong tooth. Take out the tooth and they take out the wrong tooth. And even then, the orthodontist can manipulate the teeth in a certain way that you still get a desired result. I love that. I love that when a patient comes in, whatever you see them out, you don't necessarily have to fix it right away, right on the spot. You have time to say, okay, let me do this, and you can step away and think about your next moves. And so when the patient comes in, you've had however long you have in between your appointments, whether it's 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you have that amount of time to come up with a plan of action for that patient. And so it really feeds my personality, where I am not the type of person that will be very suited for like an emergency doc situation. I could not be the type to work in an ER because I just do not tire that quickly. And so I like orthodontics because I am able to process and think through things, come up with a solution that is thoroughly thought through before I pursue the plan of action. I love that orthodontics is clean. There's no blood involved. Patients typically are very, very happy to see me. There's usually no dental anxiety when patients see me. And it's an overall more pleasant experience. With oral surgery, there's a lot more management, not only dental anxieties, patient anxieties, but the things that could potentially be life-changing and life-altering for the patient. That is now in your hands, and I do not want to be responsible for that. And also, it is bloody and messy. And it's just not for me.
Like you had said, they're completely different specialties.
Yeah, night and day. All my friends that are oral surgeons are very high strung, and I'm just very chill. Very different personalities.
There's something for everyone. Well, another question is, you have experienced both sides of shadowing, being the student and the dentist. So what are some tips that you would give a pre-dental student when shadowing to get the best experience?
Okay, sure. I still have students that come to shadow me at my office, and I would just say be prepared, have an open mind, right? Because you're going to see a lot of different things in a lot of different offices that you shadow, and no two orthodontists are ever going to practice the same. Everybody's philosophy is going to be different, so have an open mind. Be prepared with the types of questions that you want to ask. Don't just show up not having any questions whatsoever. Be curious. Ask a lot of questions. See the cases with the doctor. They allow you to ask questions about the particular case, and not just ask about orthodontics too, because there's so much more than just fixing teeth. Ask about the day-to-day life of orthodontics. You want to know if that's the lifestyle that you like. If you're wanting to own a practice, ask about what business ownership is like. You may find that you do not want to be a practice owner. You may find that you prefer to be, a partner in a practice or an associate in a practice. I have a lot of colleagues that do not want anything to do with practice ownership. It's just too much work, too much stress, and they would rather see the patients, do good by the patients, and go home. Have to, think about business. So it's more than just teeth. Mind, ask a lot of questions, be curious.
Thank you for the advice. So I know you have patients to get to, so I'm going to ask one more question.
Sure.
And it's, in your opinion, what's the best and worst thing about the orthodontics field?
Oh my gosh, I can't think of a bad thing. What? I have to really think hard about that.
If not, you can do just the positives.
Yeah, there isn't really, in my opinion, a lot of negatives when it comes to orthodontics as a profession. You are in charge of impacting someone's life for the better. I cannot tell you the impact that you will have on someone's life when they come in and they're very insecure, or they have low self-esteem, or they're lacking confidence. And literally, before your treatment ends, the patient's life is changing right before your eyes at every appointment. Like, that is very satisfying, and you have a hand in that. You have something to do with changing someone's life forever, and that's a big deal. That's the kind of impact that I go into orthodontics wanting to do for my patients. If someone tells me that, I just never been a person that smiles really big. I smile with my mouth closed. I was never very confident in doing that until I got treatment. The fact that you have a hand in their self-development, in their growth, in making them the person that they are today, it's just a big deal to me. And so orthodontics is really amazing. The only thing that you have to be mindful of is that you have to be really, really, really detail oriented, because you will see those patients that are very exacting, and they will pick up on literally tenths of millimeters worth of difference between each tooth. And so I would say hone those skills. If you're to become an orthodontist, you have to be very, 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 very detailed. And it comes with practice.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for coming, and thank you for everyone watching. I love the presentation and all the advice.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Again, if there are more questions, you can always shoot them via Instagram in a DM, or you have my email. You can send it in the email. I'll respond, and you can send them to whoever asked.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll see you guys